Dean is here as a visitor, technically.
Yeah. Do we have the visitors from Access Able?
That would be Ed and Chris. Oh, not from Access Able, no.
No. Okay.
And can I say, I'm surely here as a town councillor, not as a member of the public. But whatever you prefer.
Okay. Are we ready to kick off then?
Aye.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
You all fired up with YouTube, Paul?
Yeah, we're up and running.
Okay, good. Well, good evening, one and all. And we'll start with the public session. I understand, Robin, you've got a statement to make.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Chairman, for this opportunity. I don't really want to make a habit of this, but when something is really worrying, you have to let colleagues who you value know about it. We are aware of the Mays Morton Road development and the concerns that that development, what impact it has on Buckingham. I've been having a series of questions with both the legal department and democratic services about whether it should be going to the local area development committee and not the strategic development committee. Well, they've come back to me with answers that, you know, major infrastructure, minerals and waste, schools, large scale developments of over 400 houses go to strategic development. What they then come back to say to me is the 170 houses in this, they're premising the reason it going to strategic development is on the Vale of Owsley Plan, policy number MMO 00006. And they also premised that it would affect the housing numbers. So it's in the 5-year plan. And that's why they wouldn't take it to the strategic, to the North Bucks Area Planning Committee. I've gone back to them because I'm not completely, as you can imagine, in agreement with them. And I've gone back to them and pointed out that the Vale plan is by no means emerging. It's 2013. It's hardly can be classed as an emerging plan now. And I've also sort of pointed out to them, in my personal opinion, that the policy they state to the Mail plan cannot therefore be considered because it really carries no weight now. It's an old policy to an old plan which hasn't actually ever passed mustard, and it could not even actually have all its hearings heard. So saying that withstanding that, you know, and the 5-year housing supply which they mention is the Vale housing supply, not the Buckinghamshire housing supply. We are not the Vale Council now, we're Buckinghamshire. So the houses they mention is part of the 5-year supply for Buckinghamshire, not just for the district. Now, I haven't had a response to that, but there are some outstanding issues in this. If this sets a precedent, I'm really concerned if this sets a precedent, that means when town councillors, and I'm here talking as a unitary councillor, not a town councillor, come to make deliberations over Mays Morton Road 3, Osier Way, would that mean that these same policies are going to come into action, which means those decisions will be taken by a strategic development control committee and not the local area joint committee? And we have as a town council, we have an interest in that because we've invested in a town plan. Both those applications are testing to our town plan, and at present, the only plan which has got any legal weight is the Buckingham Neighbourhood Development Plan. So I'm not sure where we go with this, but to sit back and say nothing about this and carry on as a unitary council, I think is irresponsible. I still contest that this should not be going to the Strategic Development Committee because this is a development well under the 400 houses which strategic developments are supposed to consider. That said, I felt that it was important enough to let you know what was going on. What the town council chooses to do or how they choose to act thereafter, or whether they choose to do anything at all is entirely up to the town council. But I am really concerned this will set a precedent, and it makes a real difficult to understand this principle that the unitary was going to development was going to be brought to the people who best understood it. It appears that's not the case. Any major decisions are going to be taken by people who may not have the same understanding of the local sides of these things. And that is a really bad thing, and a really bad thing for the unitary, and a really bad thing for North Buckinghamshire. That's my personal opinion. I haven't consulted any other unitary councillor on this. They may share my opinion, they may not. But I hope that's okay. I will wind up now because we've got a long meeting ahead of us. If there's any questions, I'll probably do them by email because there's a long meeting. But I have given a transcript of what I've said roughly to the town clerk, which is freely available from him if you wish to read it. Because I don't want to keep anything from you, because I value your opinions after all these years greatly.
Okay, thank you, Robin. Are there any other members of the public, Paul? Hello, Paul.
I believe only members of the public who wish to speak specifically about the excess for all item under that agenda item when we get there.
Sorry, I missed that first bit.
Nobody who wishes to speak at this point.
Okay, well, we'll make a start then. But I'm minded to move item 8 on the agenda to the end of the meeting because it does contain some items of confidentiality, which are germane to the whole question. So I'll just warn you about that. I am prepared to suspend standing orders so that Christine and Ed, if he's still here, could come in on the discussion, but I do think it should be in the confidential area. So having said that, let's start off with item 1, the apologies for absent. Have we got any?
Councillor Mahi for lateness, and also apologies from Buckinghamshire Councillor Tim Mills.
Right, okay, thank you. Any declarations of interest? I'll take that as no. Okay. Minutes of the last meeting then, held on the 21st of September. Is everybody happy with them? Anybody not happy? Have I lost sound?
Yeah, nobody's indicating anything.
Okay, good. And to note the minutes of the Communications Strategy Group meeting on the 5th of October. We can all note them, can't we?
Duly noted.
Thank you. We'll move on then to the action report, Appendix A. The first item is actually on the agenda. The other 3 items are due to come up in January. So does anybody want to add anything in there at this stage? No? Okay. On to the next item then, which is the COVID update from Paul. We're recommended to note it. Paul, do you want to say anything about it?
I don't think there's anything to add, no.
No, okay. Does anybody want anything to have anything to say?
Only to thank Paul for what he's doing.
No comments about it? Okay. We'll move on then to the internal audit report, which is a hefty thing. Paul, do you want to outline anything on this?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. So the first thing to say is that this is the first report from our new internal auditor. You might remember we appointed a new auditor sometime earlier in the year. We felt at the time that our last auditor had been with us a while, so we needed a fresh challenge. The new auditor is actually a team of 2, so both of them came to the first meeting. They spent all day with us, asked loads of questions, we gave them loads of documents. Their reports do come in a different format to the previous auditor. So the previous reports had lots and lots of words in, which probably covered us and them, I guess. But this one is a lot more straightforward and is absolutely based on the structure of the AGAR, which is the format we have to report to our external auditor in next year at the end of the financial year. And also it comes with a spreadsheet, which is the first document you'll see, where they've issued their conclusions, observations and recommendations. And then I've commented when appropriate on their recommendations, or I've worked with Jodie to come up with a comment. happy to take questions and observations. There's nothing on there which makes me concerned for the next audits, so like the end of year audit. So a lot of the purpose of this audit is to identify anything we should sort out before the year end. So there's nothing there at the moment which raises concerns for me, but obviously it's for councillors to identify anything else. And the other thing to say is that the auditor, I will arrange for the auditor to meet with Mike as chair of the committee when he comes in next time. So at least you'll be certain there is an auditor and he is writing down the things he says and I haven't just made the whole thing up.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Anybody have any comments? Paul, can you do your normal thing and let me know people that do?
Yeah, Councillor Try and Councillor Stutchbury.
Okay, Martin.
Just for clarification, did the auditor put the risk level against it, or did you?
The auditor did.
Okay, thank you very much.
Robin.
Just to say, Chairman, that this is a better position we are with this audit than the last one we had, where there was a stark, the full audit, there was a stark whatever. But I think it would be worth the town clerk explaining the way, because this is a different format than the previous audits we've had, and it is very short and very brief. And I'm pleased that the chairman's going to meet them when they come back. But this is a very short report compared to some of the things we've had in the past, and it's not in depth. It's really almost like you'd find a scrutiny report rather than an audit report. When I say that, it's giving us scores against attainments. But as the previous report we had wasn't done under that matrix, that's just where we are. I have no problem with it. I just want a little understanding that the figures put in there for delivery and that Paul's comfortable with the way the report's put together, and he feels that it's a way we can go forward, because if he can't work with it, we need to consider, it more carefully, because it is a different type of report, isn't it?
Yeah, it's another example of less sometimes being more, isn't it, Robin?
Well, you'd know about that, wouldn't you, Mike?
If I could just respond to that, I mean, it is a much shorter report. As I said, it is in the format and the structure that the AGAR comes in. And it might be worth us having another conversation about the AGAR at some point and how that is structured, which might be helpful to you before the end of the year, actually, now that I understand it. But actually, if you look back at the internal audit reports we had from the previous auditor, they might have picked up one or two things, which were generally hidden in Word somewhere if you wanted to go looking for them. Whereas actually this one has picked up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 key issues, which are really there and clear for you as councillors to follow, and it prioritises for you.
Yeah.
So actually, I feel more challenged by this audit than I did under the previous internal auditor, and that's a really healthy thing. So there might be less on the page, but actually what is there is clearer, I think, and picks up things more helpfully.
Thank you for that. That's what I wanted to hear.
Any further questions or points? No.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that I really like the layout. I think it's really clear, and an excellent audit report, that because of the way that it orders things in high and medium, and it focuses us on it.
It's a risk assessment, isn't it?
Yeah, and the great thing is that overall positive 96.51. So I think our staff are looking after our finances well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, Paul?
No.
No. So should we just receive it then? We'll move on. Everybody happy?
Yeah.
We'll move on to item 9 then. The budgets. Let me scroll to infinity. To the incoming expenditure bit. There's 11 pages there. Do you want me to go through them page by page and you pick up as we go, as usual? I'll do that anyway then. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7.
Yep.
Yep, go on. Moving on.
Let me get to it. It was the chamber works. We seem to be spending money, but nothing's happening. Or has money being spent, or what's going on?
Yeah, we spent money on the air conditioning. That's now fitted in both the
Right.
centre and the chamber.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anything else on page 7? Page 8 then? Page 9? Page 10? And page 11. Okay, now the purchase ledger invoice listing. 2 pages there. Page 1. And page 2. We move on then to the revised budget.
Oh, hang on, Councillor Stutchbury has a hand.
Just to say, we've seen all these, haven't we, Councillor Smith? But when we send the backs out and we all look at the stuff that we're agreeing, after we've agreed it, could I suggest that, so that this people understand the flow of it, that we may just send that round after each one to all councillors, even though certain councillors agree that the expenditure. I think it wouldn't be wrong for all councillors to see what's been spent in a month, you know, because otherwise it's a limited group of people. I know that's because a limited group of people agree that expenditure, but I think it's probably wise other councillors get to see that as well, if only on a quarterly basis, to see how it goes, because they've got to manage, you know, the money. We come to this sheet at this meeting, we'll come to it at another meeting, and it's easy to understand it when you've seen all the flow of it, Councillor Smith, but it's just the thought. I mean, it might not be agreeable with anybody. I'm happy to be disagreed with.
What do you reckon, Paul?
So I suppose a couple of comments. One, yes, we can. There's nothing secret about it that councillors can't see, and it would only be the push of a button to forward it on. So from that point of view, it would have to be clear it wasn't offering other councillors the chance to comment because the decision's made. So to clarify for everyone, what used to happen in the good old days when we all met in the chamber was at the start of the meeting, chairs of 2 as signatories, 2 of them would go through all the invoices and checks and sign them off. Now we do that through an electronic process where Jodie sends around a spreadsheet and count when the chairs agree to it, and if 2 chairs have to reply by email. So there's now a spreadsheet list which we could circulate around. Presumably, once we get back in the chamber, we'll want to go back to signing checks or signing bits of paper so you can actually look at invoices in a bit more detail. So I guess it wouldn't be a permanent arrangement. And you do get the report in front of you on a regular basis. So whether that's the best way of doing it, I'm not sure, but I won't say no. And Councillor Newell and O'Donoghue both have their hands.
Don't all councillors have access to these papers anyway?
Yes, quite.
So if a councillor on another committee is interested, they can check anyway.
Very true. Lisa?
Thanks, Mike. I was going to say exactly the same thing. We all get to see the accounts
Yeah.
on every agenda. So, yeah, I don't see the difference in what we get in our papers, to be honest.
No.
Well, I only said it
No,
because...
it's all right, Robin, thanks. We'll move on then to the revised budget forecast. Again, Paul, do you want to say anything about this?
So I think a couple of things I want to clarify about this. One is the forecasts on this, the numbers we forecast against are the ones that are impacted mostly by COVID. It's still a bit early in the year to give you an accurate end of year budget forecast. I know that's something you want to have before the end of the year this time round. My overall prediction would be we'll underspend by more than that says, just because of the nature of things, especially now we're in lockdown again, we just can't do as much, which is quite frustrating. So the likely, and we'll certainly, I haven't included in the forecast underspend yet the cemetery repayments, which are in the budget, so that would be a 40 grand underspend, but presumably we'll put that straight into reserve to take it off the price of buying the new cemetery building that we do.
Okay, thanks. Shall we go through it again a page at a time? There's 12 pages altogether. So start with, actually the figures start on page 2. Page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11.
Councillor O'Donoghue.
Yep.
Oh,
Go on, Lisa.
thanks, Mike. I think it's on page 3.
Oh, no, we're at page 11 now.
I know, but I'm trying to scroll down quickly, and it's hard to see as it's going so fast. So I'm a bit behind. The website provision and operation, the money's still going to stay the same, but I just wondered, depending on what the conversation later is going to take, whether that should be upped a little bit if we're going to be adding things to our website.
So I can't think of anything we're going to add that's going to cost us money in this financial year.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
I'm scrolling rapidly back down to where I think we were, which was around about page 10.
Councillor Stutchbury.
Yes, Councillor Stutchbury.
Can't hear you.
Just a general comment, Chairman. You're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know if I can read 15 columns that quickly. You obviously
you should have read them before you got here.
I know that, Chairman, but it doesn't look convincing. And the other point is, I have read them, Chairman. That's why I'm going to say what I'm going to say now. I think we need to pull out of these figures the figures of things that we haven't achieved through COVID. When I say that, there's some big target numbers like solar panels and things that we haven't done, funds that we may have committed to doing cemetery works, and we need to have a talk about all those things as a separate item. Just doing this and ignoring that isn't responsible. I think we need to go and have a talk about them. There may be a separate item of where we are with those things. There's several things in here. I don't want to have to go through them one by one, but as we were going page by page, I couldn't quite do that. So I would propose that we bring all those expenditures, the things we can't do through COVID and the things we can't do because they haven't been able to get tenders in and stuff like that, and have it back at once. So we have a mop up of exactly where we are. They're the big ticket expenditure of the council and they're the big numbers, and that's what we should be looking at.
Paul?
Yeah, to partly answer that, the next agenda item where we look at the budget for next year, we're going to talk about earmark reserves for next year and some of the underspend on earmark reserves.
Yeah, but that isn't the agenda item we're on, is it?
No.
No, the agenda item we're talking about now, we can talk about that on that agenda item, but I'm just suggesting that maybe we need to have an agenda item discussing about this, because we're coming up to the end of the year, and as you said, it's too early to predict, but we need to know where the big numbers are going, because they're the ones which will affect the preset more than all the other numbers. And that's what I'm doing. We can not do that, and that's fine. We can do it all at precept, but I do think that's where we should be going. And we all know what they are.
But what we're looking at the moment, Robin, is the figure displacement caused essentially by COVID, which are the red figures on the thing. The next item is the proposed draft budget for next year.
But within that, Chairman, there are things that we are not doing this year, and we need to discuss those. We've just gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 through the pages, and yes, you're right. We should reread them before, but okay, we'll
move on then if we can, then please, Robin.
So we're going to do nothing. That's fine.
So
then we'll do nothing about it.
It's the next item on the agenda, and I don't think we need these sort of last-minute snidey comments on that, because that's what it was. Anything else on the rest of that sheet? That's pages 11, 12 and 13. Nor in that case, we'll move on to the draft budget then, which is the 5-year budget, or proposed 5-year budget. Paul, do you want to introduce this?
Thank you, Chairman. So the first thing to say is that this has been through the committees already with limited changes. We've tinkered with it a little bit as we go, as we work out more about next year's forecast. It's predicated on our costs going up by 1.5. I mean, trying to guess RPI and what costs will actually increase by in the next 12 months is anybody's guess, and estimates vary widely. We're putting a 2% increase for staff salaries, which is what the Unitary Council have done, so that's not a terrible guess. It's very unlikely we'll get more than 2% with the national agreement, I would suggest. What we don't yet have is the council tax base figure. So normally we'd have had that from Aylesbury Vale by the end of October. I understand we'll have it from Buckinghamshire Council by the start of December, which will be in time for the next committee round, but it's a bit more awkward to deal with it when it's coming in later. The overall headline is item 4, which to do with earmarked reserves. So what I'm proposing is a pretty chunky increase of earmarked reserves. There are 2 reasons for that. One is that we've talked previously this year that the council's reserves are now higher than the recommendation because they changed the recommendation to be just 3 months unless you've got a really good reason. So we have got some justification for having more than 3 months, especially in the current climate. And there are other councils around who are struggling with not enough reserves now. But also in an effort not to put the precept up or not to put it up by very much, I'm suggesting that most of the key capital works we need to do next year we pay for out of an earmarked reserve, which means A, we're spending money we've got, using our money responsibly rather than putting up the precept. It also means once it goes into earmarked reserves, it's not so tricky if things overrun, because we don't know what's going to happen with lockdown going forward. We don't know what the impacts will be. So it gives a bit more flexibility on the capital budget going forward. That just seemed to be a more sensible way of managing the council's funds overall. Apart from that, I've listed most of the key changes in the report.
So essentially what you're saying, Paul, is increase the earmarked reserves but decrease the general reserve.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody got any comment on the narrative?
Councillor Stutchbury.
Yes, please, Robin.
Yeah, I'm interested that you'd be criticising for having a more balanced reserve, having just audited all 4 district councils and now Buckinghamshire County Council's end of year accounts. There weren't no great reserves there apart from in Wickham. So is that because that is a big no-no to have it in reserves, or is it? I know it's the same money in a different account through you, Chairman, but with earmarked reserves, some of those earmarked reserves are committee reserves for projects that haven't come in, and we can't start using them funds for something that hasn't got a minute number against them. I just want a little understanding why we would do that. I can understand the logic that we're going to try and do it so we can reduce the precept down, but it's still the same money, because what usually happens at precept is somebody suggests taking money from reserves to reduce the precept. If we put it in earmarked reserves and somebody does that, we may have to have a big decision thereafter because it's all in earmarked reserves. That's what's been the usual habit at precept. We get within a quite percentage, and the usual thing is somebody says, oh, let's take so much out of reserves just to keep the council tax down. So I just want to be assured that that's going to be sustainable in the long run.
Anybody else got any comments before I get Paul to come back? Okay, Paul, do you want to respond to that point?
Yeah, there were 2 or 3 things in there. So the rules we're under about reserves are different to the rules governing unitary and principal authorities, so it's not always a straightforward comparison. We don't list earmarked reserves actually by committee, we just list them by earmarked reserve items, but they've all been minuted by a committee, and we'd report back to that committee on how they were spent. There's no suggestion to take any of the currently earmarked reserve money away from earmarked reserves. So there's no risk to any of the money that committees have put into earmarked reserves being lost or moved to anything else. That's not being suggested. And to be honest, given the current economic climate, the reason for proposing the overall budget this way is to avoid putting the precept up if we can, when to get the council tax base information in. So we won't have that conversation about, well, let's not put the precept up and use reserves for it, because that's quite a clunky thing to do, and it advantages you sometimes in 1 year. It causes issues in the longer term. because actually the budget doesn't go up in the way that you want to, and then you get stuck. Otherwise, you end up having to go into reserves every year, which isn't a healthy thing to do. So hopefully by doing it this way, we won't enter into that conversation if councillors are happy as the budget goes through committees. But obviously, this is the key point, that if councillors are at all unhappy with that approach, then now's the time to tell me, so we can redo the budget or come up with different options for the next committee round if that's what you'd like to do. Or if you're happy with the approach I'm taking, then we'll carry on with that approach and finesse the budget through the next committee round on this basis.
I'm happier now. Now I've heard what you said, I'm happier with it.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks, Robin.
Councillor Try has a hand.
Sorry, Councillor?
Try.
Yes, Martin.
I mean, the idea is good, and also it's good for other people of Buckingham as well, without increasing any of their levies. Why do we have to do it in one big bang for this year? Would it not be prudent to, because we don't have a crystal ball, we don't know what's coming next year, why don't we spread it over a couple of years, so that, you know, there's some taken out the following year, just in case we need to do any alterations in that year. Otherwise, you may have to put up the taxes for the following year. Why are we just assuming, because the laws change, or not the law, but the recommendation has changed to say that we don't have so much in our reserves, general or earmarked, why are we taking this account all this year just to use it up?
So a couple of things on that. We're not, I mean, in a way, we're just relabeling what's in the bank account to start with. And I wouldn't expect that we'd spend all that earmark reserve money in the first year anyway. But the other thing to say is that the budget I'm presenting does not take us down to the absolutely recommended earmark reserve limit anyway. So we'll still have a decent cushion above the recommended earmark reserve of the quarter's expenditure, especially if we do underspend this financial year, as I'm predicting we will do, verbally to you, if not in writing. So we'll still have I would suggest, a pretty decent cushion anyway. I mean, there are some risks. You know, we could face an unforeseen £1 million cost somewhere. Don't know what it would be. Hopefully we've been insured against it. So it's a tricky game to play, isn't it, to work out what we might need in the next 2 or 3 years' time. There's guidance. What I'm recommending will give us a cushion above the guidance, and it gives us a way of getting some stuff done. That was the reason for it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, anybody else?
Councillor Newell.
I just wanted to thank you for planning it like this, and so that we can see how the figures work out years ahead. And I know that there's only one minor thing I wanted to mention on page 3, that at Cemetery Lodge we're replacing the wooden soffits and fascias with durable plastic. And I know that is a sort of environment issue probably, and that it's more cost effective to have plastic. But personally, I much prefer sticking with wood. Yeah, so I guess it's on a cost grounds.
And longevity as well. The plastic will last forever. And you can get plastic which is sort of grained, so it looks like wood.
Yes. So I suppose it's the same as people sort of replacing wooden windows in their houses with plastic. Which
Kinda,
up to now,
yeah.
we keep repairing ours rather than replacing them with plastic. But yeah, I suppose plastic is good for some things and shouldn't always have a bad name.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it is very good for longevity.
Yeah.
Doesn't need maintenance, and that's all saving money in the long term. Anything else on that narrative part?
Councillor Harvey has a hand.
Up to page 3. Okay, John?
Yeah, just to respond to Councillor Neal. It's my understanding that the plastic that we're talking about would have been recycled from other sources. So it's a good use of plastic that will otherwise be floating in the sea somewhere off in the South Pacific. So I think this is a good use of plastic because it is going to be long lasting. And cutting down trees and using wood is not what we want to do in many ways.
And Councillor O'Donoghue.
Lisa?
Thanks, Mike. Just a question on the depot, the replacement of a metal staircase.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
that really our responsibility to replace that?
Yeah, we own the depot.
All right, fair enough. Thank you.
All right, should we move on to the summary draft budget for the next few years? Just there's quite a lot of that. I can go through it a page at a time if you like, but I tend to go too fast for some of this. So is there anything in there that anybody's picked up that wants to mention? Yes, Robin.
But only just to say, Chairman, it matches what the town clerk actually said, and we're maintaining our precept, not increasing it, in the sense that if you don't put it up 1 year, effectively the next year you've cut it, your precept. So we are maintaining it, but I still think we'll have to review it, period, whether these figures meet, because we don't know what our commitments are going to be. We don't know how fast devolved services will happen. We don't know whether we're going to have to make any changes there. So I think it's all okay, really. I mean, we always talked about doing a 5-year plan, never ever got there, and this is the way to go so you can plan your finances. So it doesn't stop people doing different things at precept, does it? Or bringing other items forward in those years. So it's fine.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Okay. Can we take it then that this is broadly acceptable?
Yeah.
Subject to ongoing review as circumstances dictate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody happy with that then?
Yes.
Thank you very much. We'll shift on to the last bit of this section, which is 6620, is it? 60. Oh, the pay scales thing, yeah, 6620. This lengthy report about pay scales and leave. There's a recommendation in there. Everybody happy that we accept that recommendation?
Propose we accept the recommendation, Chairman.
Yeah. Agreed.
Anybody disagree? No. Okay, we'll move on then to Appendix D. Item 10, direct debits and standing orders. I'm a bit puzzled by a couple of things here. What is PHS? What is Opus?
PHS is the
Squarespace, Mainstream, Nemesco, and Variable AHT.
So the first thing to highlight is these are all direct debits which you've seen coming out on a regular basis in the past. Yeah. So they're all providers we work with regularly. I'm trying to remember all of them. Squarespace is the new website provider who we're using for the TIC website. Mainstream are the office phones. Namesco is the web name domain provider, so they take out 26 quid every couple of years. And I'm not sure off the top of my head what the other three are.
PHS is the public personal hygiene service.
Yeah. Yeah, the bins.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Righty ho. Everybody happy with that then?
Yeah. No, Councillor Stutchbury's got a hand.
Yeah. Just the different variations in the monthly rates thing. I don't think tonight, but it would be useful to know what those buildings and properties were we were paying those rates against, because it's got lots of different figures. There must be different rateable properties, but at some point, not now, to know what they actually are, to give us a better understanding why it's £40 and why it's £973. You know, we need to understand that as councillors, not just the figures, but that can come another day. I don't want it tonight.
They're all itemised in the budget. So under each property, it does give you the rates for that property. So under Buckingham Centre, it gives you then the rates for the Buckingham Centre and the depot. It gives you the rates for the depot. But we can put them all together in one list if that would be easier.
I think it'd be wise. Another day.
It would be helpful if these could be specified a little more clearly, I think, in future.
Okay.
But otherwise, everybody happy?
Councillor Try has a hand.
Sorry, go on then, Martin.
Yes. Why have you put the Buckinghamshire Council rates down as a fixed item, where things like maybe Namesco or BT is variable?
Because the variable ones are done on a direct debit, whereas the other ones are done on standing orders. So we changed the standing orders, but the direct debits are actually in the account as direct debits, so we don't control what goes out every month.
Okay, all right. So it's a moot point then, really, because they are still variable, but it's called off by the other people.
Yeah. The reason, just to point out that the reason this is here, the audit picked up that we should give this to you every 2 years and we haven't done. So that's why it's here for sign off, but we'll give you a version which is clearer in a committee or two's time, so you've got it in more detail.
Okay. Anything else on that? No.
Oh.
Right, we'll move on to item 11 then. Robin, your motion. Which I'm sure
it's basically to propose that we give the staff an extra day off over the Christmas period. Terry and I discussed this, that they've worked so hard for the COVID period, which is very difficult to do anything fiscal, but it would at least mean that we recognise what they've done for us. It's a very small gesture, but I think over the Christmas period, having an extra day off for the staff would be a signal of our appreciation, which I know is there, and I just hope that members will agree it.
Mm-hmm.
Lisa?
I'd probably second that, Chairman.
It's seconded by Terry.
Oh, is it? It doesn't say it on there, sorry. Oh, it does. It does. No bad.
Yeah.
Anybody want to speak against the proposal?
No.
All right, we've got hands from councillors Try, Collins and Morgie.
Right, Martin?
Yes, thank you. Although I love our staff and I think they're doing a grand job, I'm not so sure in the economic climate that they have done a huge amount of extra work over this period compared with other people. We have done a lot of events that haven't happened, and that work could have been taken up by doing other things connected with COVID. And just now we have nationally agreed that they get an extra day's annual leave starting from April. It's a nice sentiment, but I don't think it's worthy at the moment of what is effectively spending public money on something which is being consumed and absorbed by other people around the country.
Geraldine?
Well, I was going to say mostly the same as Martin on that, because I don't know. I think it's wrong in this climate at the moment. And COVID's still ongoing, so there's more time to go, and I can't specify that the extra work is there at the moment.
Would it be helpful to members before anybody else?
Robin, Howard?
It does concern me as to the signals it gives. Whilst I agree the staff do work hard, we're talking about putting one of our own staff into furlough. There are many people out there who are furloughed, who have lost their jobs, who are trying to seek work, who probably had some of their pay reduced. Our staff are fortunate in having a reasonably secure job, have a pension entitlement, and I'm not sure it's the right thing to do at the moment. Another way is to give a financial Christmas bonus, but I'm not even sure about that. I think it's just the wrong time to give these sorts of benefits to staff, however much I do sympathise with the motion.
Anybody else? Robin, do you want to sum
Yeah,
up?
I'll just come back. I mean, I was interested in the concern expressed. Why this was a considered proposal, in the sense that it cannot have escaped your notice that the ground maintenance staff have worked continuously throughout the period. They've had to work in more changed conditions to achieve what they've done, and we've had no complaints about of any notable complaints about what they've done. We've also had members of staff that had to change their entire working practices throughout COVID, which to work online, more teams working, and they've done quite a good job of switching the way they've done, and they've managed to do it. Just because we couldn't do events, that was not, there was other events done, so that's a weak argument. Equal work went into other things, and it's signalling what we think about them. I did discuss it before bringing it with the town clerk. I also came to this conclusion when Councillor Bloomfield and I were discussing how well they'd all worked and what they'd done, and I put it on the agenda knowing that Councillor Bloomfield was willing to second it, because we have to recognise what they've done. I'm sure we'll all have an extra day off over Christmas. I'm sure many people will, and we can do nothing about resolving the national problem. We can do nothing about resolving what it is. I just hoped that there would be a bit more information and knowledge about what's actually gone on within the council during this period. To see not to be there in the depth that I thought there was within the council. It just shows how little people realise what's gone on. But that is said, I will ask for a recorded vote through you, Chairman, because I think it's important that the staff know who appreciates them.
Can we go to the vote, please, Chairman?
Yes, I was just about to, Terry, but Robin did have the right to reply to the other comments, and that as the mover of the motion. So we'll now go to the vote then. Those in favour, please show, and can you shout the names out, Paul?
Will do. Councillors Smith, O'Donoghue, Stutchbury, Bloomfield and Harvey.
Those against?
It was 5, sorry. Against, Councillors Mordew, Newell, Collins, Try and Hirons. That's also 5.
So it's the chair's casting.
Are there any abstentions?
Are there any abstentions?
Sorry, I can't count.
No.
No abstentions.
No, I didn't think there would be. So I've got the casting vote, and I'll vote in favour of the motion.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
We'll move on to item 12, which is the compliments and complaints sheet. And just note that, I think. Doesn't need any comment, does it? Item 13, the chairman's announcements. Well, I'd remind you that it's the last Resources Committee meeting before Christmas and the New Year. So I'd like to wish you every seasonal greeting.
Wow.
Thank you, Mike. Happy Christmas to you too.
Happy Christmas, Mike. You got in first.
Yeah.
The next meeting is the 4th of January. And there is an extraordinary meeting of this committee on the 18th of February. That's a Thursday, to discuss the grant applications and so forth. That closes this part of the meeting. So if you want